Good morning, everyone. My name's Norman Hall. Welcome to Star Business Solutions 2021 webinar series. Today, I'd like to get through a few housekeeping issues before we start, and then I'll hand it over to Josh, who will be talking about MYOB Advanced sales orders, advanced inventory replenishment, advanced purchase orders, which will include import costing, sometimes called landed costing, and then we'll have time for a Q&A session. Just some housekeeping things to start with. We would like you to keep all of your questions to the end of the webinar. However, just so you don't forget them, as we go along and you think of your questions, please type them into the question area, and we'll take note of them and come back and address them at the end of the session. We will also be sending everyone who's attended the webinar a copy of the recording. That should come out within the next 24 hours. If you don't see it come through by, say, this time tomorrow, please let me know. Today, you can see that we have effectively three presenters. I'm your host. I'm the Director of Marketing for Star Business Solutions, and with my wife, Trish Hall, we own Star Business Solutions. Today's demonstrator will be Joshua Ditty. He likes to be called the demo guy. He's very good at what he does, and he'll be taking you through a number of examples as well as talking around the functionality issues. We've also got the pleasure of having a guest panelist today. His name is Julian Greening. Julian is one of the channel sales managers for MYOB, and he will be able to give you their perspective on today's topics. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Josh. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Norman. So we've got three, main topics that we'll be going through today as per the agenda from Norman. The first one that we're touching on is what we call sales orders. And there is a lot that we can cover for all different types of businesses. So what I thought I'd go through, at least initially, is a very broad overview of some of the things you can do with sales orders within MYOB Advanced, highlighting which areas we'll be touching on as part of the demonstration. But as always with our webinar series, if you do have a detailed requirement or a specific requirement that wasn't covered, we're more than happy to, if you get in touch with us, we can potentially organise a more tailored demonstration for your requirements. So sales orders within MYOB Advanced, you can get them into the system in quite a number of different ways. Today, we'll just simply be entering it via the MYOB Advanced website. However, there is the ability of entering them via an app on a mobile phone, either Android or iOS, as well as the ability of importing sales orders via spreadsheets or CSV, as well as web services like API, which some of our clients use tools like a point of sale system, maybe an e-commerce platform, maybe they've got a customer portal, or they're dealing with some of the big chain customers or suppliers from an EDI perspective. We do have the ability of then consolidating those sales orders, which can be quite important for some of those larger chains, as well as the ability of doing a pick, pack, ship process, both within MYOB Advanced as well as through the mobile app available. And finally, of course, invoice processing. Once we jump over from sales orders, we'll then be looking at the inventory replenishment. And there's three main topics there that I thought I'd touch on as well. So there's the ability of reordering stock based on minimum, maximum levels, or what we call reorder points, as well as purely just on a sales order demand. So if you are a purchase to order kind of environment where you're purchasing stock based on the sales orders that are being entered, then that's one of the examples we'll go through. And in addition, we can do demand forecasting. And finally, once we've looked at inventory replenishment, we'll then look at actually creating some purchase orders. Now today we'll be focusing on three of the main entry points for purchase orders. just the straight up, let's enter a purchase order. The purchase order is created via inventory replenishment, and the purchase order is created directly from a sales order. We can handle full purchase requests or requisition process, including supplier bidding, and purchase orders can be generated directly from production orders or our material requirements planning. Both the manufacturing and material requirements planning were both covered in a fair level of detail in last month's MYOB Advanced manufacturing webinar that we did, which you can find on our YouTube channel. And finally, after entering some purchase orders, we'll take a look at the landed costing, or as some people refer to it, import costing. Okay, so without further ado, we will jump into the product. So as always, I tend to start my my webinars in MYOB Advanced with some form of a dashboard. So this is giving me a good view of the various sales orders that I currently have in the system, both from a sales history perspective, what's ready to be shipped, and some other nice little statistics to keep track of. In addition, I am keeping track of some potentially high value or items that I need to keep an eye on and their stock levels, and what purchase orders are currently waiting to be received. So let's go jump into a sales order and start ourselves off. Now, regardless of whether or not this sales order came in via an e-commerce platform, via EDI or import scenarios, it all ends up, or can all end up, in the same place and treated equally. So we'll go ahead and just select one of our customers. So this might be more representing either taking a phone call or an email, and then we'll go and enter the order. Now I'm going to enter or show three of the main features that we have within our sales orders, which I find quite useful for data entry. The first one is I guess the more obvious of the three, and that is simply coming in and entering some lines. So I can simply come in and start typing what I might be looking for, and I'm going to select this particular type of laptop computer. You'll notice that after I've selected that laptop, it is showing me down the bottom that I have 150 of them on hand, but only 140 of them are actually available. There's a number of reasons why that may be the case, and we'll actually be looking at that in more detail when we get to the inventory replenishment section. But fairly simple, I'm going to come in and say we need 3 of those. Okay, I'm going to enter just one more line this way as well. So just one of the other particular items that I have, so maybe a mouse for that computer, or maybe 3 of them, one for each of the laptops. So that's a more traditional way of entering your sales orders, but you'll notice these 2 items up the top. So the add stock item relates to a lot of businesses. So if I go ahead and select that option, this does give me the ability to either scan barcodes, look at warehouses or specific types of items using what we call item classes. Alternatively, and the real benefit I find for our users is this sold since feature. So I can select sold since. That will then bring up a list of the sales, or the items I should say, that have previously been sold to this customer in the last 3 months. You can expand that, of course, if you'd like. And I can see that they've previously also purchased this particular TV. I have 32 of them available, and last time they purchased 3 for $408.99 on the 21st of April. So I can simply come in here and say I want 2 of those and add that to my order. So there is a good way of keeping track of what your clients traditionally purchase, and which means you can make sure that you catch any of those potential sales that you might be missing. The next one I thought I'd go through is a little bit more niche, but some of the people on the webinar, I think this might relate quite closely to. That's what we call matrix items. Now, the example I'm going to go through is more of a clothing scenario, but hopefully as I go through, you can see how that might apply in different areas. So if I select Add Matrix Item, we can come in and select a specific, what we call template. So I've just got a classic kind of t-shirt, and that particular t-shirt we sell in blue and red, and in the sizes extra small to XXL. I can also come in and select that same display available details, and as I come in and order potentially maybe 2 of the blue in small, you will notice down the bottom that I am seeing that in that specific size and that specific color, we have 5 of them on hand and available. And I can come in here and pick maybe 2 blue and 2 red. This works quite well integrating with a number of e-commerce platforms. Traditionally, if you were to purchase things like clothing through a website, you'd be able to see the one item and select the colors and sizes. This allows that same set of functionality. So it's a bit of an eclectic sales order I've got here. I've got a laptop, a mouse, a TV, and some t-shirts. And if I was just to touch on a couple of other key features that I think would be quite relevant for our users, is also the ability on this payments tab. So we do have the ability of creating prepayments. So if some of your clients have to provide a deposit or potentially paying in full, we can apply those payments to the orders in advance. Okay, I'll just remove those t-shirts for the moment, and we'll just look at the computer items, because when we get to the pick and pack, I'll try and keep it quick as well. Now, one of these items, the mouse in question, does have serial and lot tracking turned on. Now, you can decide when you actually want to trigger some of these components, but if I was to look at my allocations section, you can look at tracking specific lot or serial numbers right back at the sales order, or just simply looking at tracking it once you hit the shipment. There's no right or wrong answer. Different clients use it for different reasons. One of the reasons you might do it right at that sales order is potentially if you're more in the food space and you're looking at expiry dates, and you may have agreed with a customer on a certain expiry date of the product. So being able to keep track of that is quite important as it flows through. Okay. So we've taken a look at the prepaid options. If you require it, you can look at, as I said, creating purchase orders or transferring it from alternate warehouses, as well as look at printing off a sales order or sales order confirmation as part of this process as well. So the customer says we're good to go, and potentially they've even provided you with a customer order number or their own purchase order. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that right there. Now, if you do have a situation where you traditionally pick, pack, and ship with the invoice, there is the option of doing what we call a quick process, which I'll just highlight very briefly, but won't go through that one today. And that is where you can perform multiple steps all in the one go, potentially printing to specific printers in the warehouse, or emailing to certain customers, or depending on the record suppliers, and away we go. But I'll be stepping through that in a bit more detail for today's session. So let's go ahead and create a shipment against our sales order. Now, as far as then the actual process with shipping these goods, much like the number of ways of getting it into the system, there are also a number of options that we can perform. So one of those is a more traditional method where I can simply come in and print a pick list, and I'll just print that for the moment. It is using the advanced report writer, so of course you can add your logos. You can even add pictures of the inventory items if that's something that you require to required to do. If I was to go back to that shipment for a second, if you were looking at performing a more automated pick and pack process, we can do that either through our automated operations, and that's more the scenario where you might have a kiosk with a barcode scanner, where you can then look at scanning the orders, scanning the items, and so on. And then, as I said before, we do also have the option of doing the pick, pack, and ship directly through an app on either an Android or iOS device. So in today's session, what we'll do is we'll take a look at just doing the shipment directly through the browser and have a look at some of the messages that I'm receiving here. So you will notice that over on the right-hand side, I've got my ordered quantity, my shipped quantity, and my unassigned quantity. So you'll see here that 3 with a little exclamation mark, it is telling me that I do need to come in and tell the system which particular lot or serial number I wish to assign. As I mentioned before, there is some options about when that occurs, but let's go ahead and do that one now. So I simply can come into my allocations screen and go ahead and select my lot or serial numbers. Now you can split this. So if I wanted to use, I need 3. If I want to use all of the 2 that are in lot number 1, I can select that and say 2. And you'll notice at the top that I still have 1 unassigned, for which I can go ahead and select that from potentially another lot or serial number. So you can both pick from multiple locations, which is what this screen is displaying, as well as multiple lot or serial numbers. And if this was an expiration date type item, like potentially perishable foods, I'd be able to see that information as well. Okay, and we can see that warning message has now disappeared. In addition to doing the pick and pack, we do have the ability of defining specifically what packages we may have, which can have both weights, volumes, and tracking numbers. And then, in addition to saying how many packages we have, we can also then potentially look at which of the items were in each of the packages. And lastly, if you do wish to track some of the freight components, there is an option within MYOB Advanced to handle that also. So now that we have picked our goods, we might decide that our next step might be to confirm the shipment. And then whether or not we're then emailing some form of shipment or order confirmation, or printing off labels, or just simply sending it straight to an invoice. All of those are options. If I go ahead and hit prepare invoice, that will take me to the final step of this sales through the invoice scenario that we've gone through. Now, of course, you'll notice with the exception of the lot or serial numbers, I haven't had to reselect any of the information the whole way along. We do have the option of doing partial shipments. So if you have back order quantities, then we can handle that and track what's remaining or outstanding. Okay, so we've done a bit of a sales order scenario. What I might do now is now switch over to the inventory replenishment and take a look at some of the features that we've got within the system here. Now, to do that, I kind of have to give a little bit of a backstory on some of the settings that I've got set up in my demonstration system. So I'm just going to bring up a stock item, and I'm just going to focus on some of the features that relate to inventory replenishment. Now, if you were with us on the MYOB Advanced Manufacturing webinar last month, you may notice some of the same items that we went through and some of the features overlap. So let's go ahead and look at that TV that I've got here. And we're going to go through a couple of screens relatively quickly, focusing on the key areas of interest. So each of our items within MYOB Advanced do have what we call an item class. And the reason why I'm bringing that one up today is because I did say I was going to come back to what we call our available calculation rules. And they're pretty simple. You come in and tick a whole bunch of boxes to define what reduces your availability and what increases your availability. So if, for example, you have purchase orders that are on the way but have not yet been receipted, and you want them to be included in the availability, maybe you have very short lead times, then you could tick that box and that would be included. If you decided that you didn't want to include sales orders at all, then you could remove that, deduct quantity on sales orders. So there are a number of options about how we handle our availability calculations. In addition, each of our inventory items can have multiple supplier details, marking a specific supplier as a default. So I've got this American Eagle distribution is our default supplier for this particular TV. And I also want to highlight this lot size of 50. So in this particular example, we purchase in groups of 50. That might be because it's the pallet size, or it could be for many different reasons. I can keep track of that. And we can also handle both minimum and maximum order quantities, as well as what we call economic order quantities, as well as lead times. So there's a lot of options, but main focus today for what we're going through next is really that lot size. And finally, on our replenishment info tab, we can define how we're replenishing this stock. So the three main areas that I tend to focus on is the purchase, manufacturing, and transfer. If you were to have multiple warehouses and you were purchasing stock from overseas, it would be fairly common to purchase that stock to a main hub or warehouse and then replenish your other warehouses from that main one. So you do have the ability of tracking that at a warehouse level. Of course, if you manufacture your stock, then we can look at using this manufacture feature or source to define the material requirements planning or MRP, but we're going to go through the purchase scenario today. And in this particular example, you'll notice that I'm going for this minimum maximum. So I've got a reorder point of 100, a maximum quantity of 200, and we can do demand forecasting and allow the system to suggest what these reorder points and maximum quantities and safety stock and so on should be based on a moving average, and you can define how many periods you wish to use. So if I was to use this scenario, it uses 3 months to calculate the moving average. We'll mainly be focusing on just the min-max quantities today. So if I head on over to my prepare replenishment, we can do this by warehouse, by specific supplier, by groups of items. If you have different product managers, you can define that, as well as potentially different product work groups. So if you do have a situation where someone looks after maybe your raw materials, whereas someone else looks after your packaging, and someone else looks after your manufactured goods, then you could use those work groups or managers to define who needs to look after which. So what you'll see here, I've got that TV. It's suggesting I should purchase 150. I have 73 on hand. 43 are currently on some form of demand. So that would primarily be from sales orders. I've got a hard demand of 3, so they're being specifically allocated, and my reorder point was 100. So I'm well under my 100. My maximum quantity is 200, and you'll notice that I'm showing 150. And the reason, once again, I've come to that number was based on that lot size of 50. So I can simply come in and select the particular line, or potentially multiple lines. So I can see that, that line down the bottom. But at the moment, let's just tick that one and hit process. So what that's gone and done, that's confirmed that we need to purchase that stock. Now you might do a number of these processes as you're going through some of your most important stock and move your way through. And then finally, you want to actually generate the purchase orders or potentially transfer orders. We can do that as part of this next step. So let's select the create purchase orders option. So here I can see that I have one line showing up as inventory replenishment for that TV. So it's saying I need to order 150. It's telling me which supplier I need to get it from. And it's also telling me that I need to order an additional 3 of that particular item as well. And that was based on a specific sales order to purchase. So on a sales order, I have directly ticked a box, say, generate a purchase order from this sales order. If I scroll across, I'll be able to see the customer, I'll be able to see the sales order, I can drill down and so on. If you're new to MYOB Advanced, some of these tables, especially in things like inventory replenishment, can give you quite a significant amount of data, and as a result, there's quite a lot of columns. If you decide there are areas or components you're not using, pretty much on any of the tables you look at within MYOB Advanced, you'll see this column configurator up the top left-hand corner, where you can come in and turn fields off or rearrange them to a more appealing order. So let's go ahead and just tick both those lines. And we're going to hit process. So that's going to open up my purchase order and have that information pre-selected or pre-entered. Now, this is just a starting point, and as I mentioned in the earlier stage of the webinar, when going through the agenda, there are multiple ways of getting purchase orders into the system, but the end result is a purchase order, which I do have the access of editing. So if I wish to add additional lines, I can come in and select additional information. So maybe I'm looking for some of those computer mice, or the Bluetooth, maybe a Bluetooth keyboard. We'll go with that one today. And maybe we need 5 of those. So we can have obviously as many lines on a purchase order as you'd like. You can create and draw down from blanket purchase orders. You can view the sales order demands. And just like in the sales order process, you can both add items and those matrix items using the similar scenario as before. There are a lot of similarities between sales orders and purchase orders, obviously the inverse from a business perspective, but from a screen, I do have the option of defining prepayments. So if you have to provide a deposit to your supplier, we can handle that process as part of that also. If you have a form of approval, MYOB Advanced does have the ability of having approval maps where you can define things like dollar values, product groups, user types, a range of different ways of categorizing your approvals and having them mapped within the system. So as these orders automatically trigger approvals, which can be approved either through the same screen I'm on today or potentially through, and once again, an app on your phone. So I'm going to go ahead and take this one off hold. And you'll notice that that's gone to pending approval. So that has required Grace to approve this purchase order. Now, depending on your access, I will come in and approve that. Actually, what we might do for this particular example is progress through. So we do have so the option of emailing Grace with a confirmation to say that there is a purchase order that requires her approval and have that then go through potentially even multiple steps as part of that process also. We do have the ability, of course, of printing this purchase order off, and depending on your approval rules, you'll notice that a number of my settings have been turned off or grayed out. So I currently don't have the option of emailing this to a supplier because it has yet to be approved. So to keep things at a simple level for today, we're going to shift on to receipting a purchase order, which can be done once again through the app or through the browser that we're going through today. If I was to come in and select one of my suppliers, I can then look at which purchase orders are outstanding for that supplier, to which I can see there are 2 with some different dates. Now, if you were getting multiple purchase orders in on the one shipment, then of course you can select them in that manner. And if you're concerned about partial receipting, then instead of doing it at a header level, you can do it at a line level. So this would give me a similar look at what we were just looking at, but this time I'm going to that line level. So let's go ahead and add all 3 to my receipt. So what I've got here as part of this process is most of my stock I do have going to a specific receiving location. So we do have that option within MYOB Advanced to do a full put away process, or alternatively go directly to its individual location. You will notice that I have tried to progress through this receipt, and it has said, excuse me, there's some unassigned serial or lot numbers. So once again, you define which of your items are serial or lot tracked and whether or not they're enforced at any one of these particular trigger points. So if I was to come in and have a look, I can see whether or not, as I said, there's a lot or serial number, and just go ahead and enter those into the system. Now, if the invoice, apologies, that also had a lot number or serial number to track. If there's a single lot number, you can look at just entering it directly in at the purchase order receipt, or as I said, via that allocations screen. So as part of that receipt process, we do have, as I mentioned before, the ability of adding landed cost. So the landed cost concept within MYOB Advanced, for those that might not be as familiar with the term, is really when you're looking at tracking things like import duties that you might be getting from customs, potentially freight costs that you might be getting from a shipping or freight company, and or insurance that you may be charged as part of that process. So the idea behind that is to get a true cost of your stock, so not just what the supplier charged you for the goods, but also those additional costs, so as you've got a clearer view of your margins and markups for sales. If I was to go ahead and select one of my landed cost suppliers, I do have the option of coming in and selecting a number of different what we call allocation methods. So we can do it based on quantity, volume, weight, or cost. So if you were to think about freight, you might do that by weight or volume. If you're doing insurance, you might do that by cost. Let's go ahead and just select one of those for the moment. And let's just say that the freight cost $100. So if I go ahead and look at my document details, I can see that this particular item may have originally cost us $14,247 to receipt it in, but we're adding an additional $100 on top of that for freight. Now, it's not uncommon for you to receive a freight invoice or bill that covers multiple receipts or shipments. You can come in and select that in here, similar to how I did on the purchase order in a previous step. So if I do want to come in here and select one of those particular outstanding lines, so here you can see, I can see some of those t-shirts that I may have purchased previously. Maybe they're being shipped from the same supplier. I can add those to my document. You'll notice as I've saved that, the freight has been allocated across. So this particular example, I did the landed cost based on quantity. So by sheer volume of that first item, it got $99.30 of the full 100. And then there's a small component that's been allocated to the subsequent lines. That will perform a cost adjustment once it's released to, as I said, potentially give you a true cost of inventory. Okay, so we've gone through the sales order process. We've looked at some of the inventory replenishment and some of the purchase order components. I think the best option now is to potentially open that up to questions. So bear with me while I open up one of our question bars, and I'll invite Julian to take himself off mute as the questions come through.
Okay, thanks for that. And just before I go through the questions, we've got a couple. Please feel free to add in more questions as we speak. And just bear in mind that it's almost impossible for Josh to cover every type of scenario in such a short period of time. So if you've got questions that are related to issues that sort of touch on what he spoke to him about, please feel free to add them in. Or if you want to go into more depth, then please contact us and we can arrange a more extensive and targeted presentation. Okay, Josh, Gerard's indicated that they deal with multiple currencies for purchasing, and they just want to know how you get the exchange rates and how they are updated.
Sure. So on transactions within MYOB Advanced, we do have the ability of handling multiple currencies. As far as the specific exchange rates, you can either enter them potentially directly if you allow that, or we can have them auto updated via the Open Exchange Rates API, which can potentially be synchronized on a schedule. So you always have the most up-to-date exchange rates.
Okay, and I am paraphrasing some of these questions. John asks, can you track intercompany transactions if you've got multiple companies and shared stock?
Yes, you sure can. So MYOB Advanced is a multi-company system. If you were in our demonstration webinar last month, we did go through a couple of different company scenarios. But if you have shared stock or shared resources, as you potentially create transactions across those companies, MYOB Advanced can auto-create inter-company transactions.
Okay, I'll share the love a little bit here and throw this one to Julian. Simone's indicated that their current setup for sales, warehouse, and back office uses different systems. Can this all be brought together, or if needs be, can they just integrate finance with other systems that they might want to use?
Good question, Norman. So to Simone, the answer is yes on both sides. So one of the key, I guess, selling points or features of MYOB Advanced is the open API, which allows you to integrate into best of breed products. So a common question that we get is from a sales team is, can we integrate into Salesforce, for example, as our CRM? And one of the wonderful parts to MYOB Advanced is that you can integrate into third-party systems like that. But certainly, I guess a key driving factor for people to reduce clutter is reduce the amount of systems that they're utilizing. And that's one of the selling points of MYOB Advanced is you have the capability, as Josh has shown, to progress things from a sales order through to the finance back office where you're creating purchase orders and things, so you can utilize it to manage all different aspects of your business, but running off one single source of truth. So hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Julian. I see a note from Anthony, only seeing the PowerPoint screen, not the demo. I'm not sure what's happening there for you, Anthony, but we have recorded today's webinar presentation.
Oh, that's a question that's just come through. So yes, we at this stage, when we for those that are new to our webinar series, to try and get through as many of the questions as possible, we do tend to answer them in I guess in more just speaking through them rather than trying to demonstrate all of the answers, just to sheer volume and time. But if any of the questions you'd like to see in more detail, feel free to reach out to us, and we're, as I said, happy to organise a more tailored demonstration.
Okay, I think that question has been a little bit different, but you will get a copy of the entire presentation if that is in fact what you meant, Anthony. So sorry about that. Let's keep with Julian for the moment. We've got to get our values worth of MYOB people. Sorry, Julian. I've got a question. We run an Excel spreadsheet for sales reporting. Can you still use this to integrate or extract from MYOB Advanced, or can it be replaced by Advanced? That question comes from Bryce.
And actually quite a valid question that is, because like we've actually gone through a transformational journey ourselves as MYOB recently in eliminating some of the sales reporting hazards that we had with running Excel spreadsheets. Part of the, I guess, the pain of running them in a spreadsheet is who can access it and the complexity in multiple formulas and tabs. So I feel your pain there, Bryce. So there's a couple of options. Again, there is some really smart reporting features, and Josh actually demonstrated a couple of those at the start of the webinar in terms of those badges that you can create, which are almost like they form a part of your dashboard screen. So a lot of people for sales reporting, they might like to know how many orders or the value of those orders. You can actually display that quite easily on a badge or on a dashboard screen. So there is quite a lot of reporting that you're able to build into it, into the UIs. But basically, for those people who want to get a little more complex, there are integrations into applications such as Microsoft Power BI, which allows you then to, I guess, go a layer deeper around what type of reporting you'd like to see. So again, there's a lot you can do with it if you're looking at running your reporting within the platform, but you can also connect again to best of breed solutions, external third parties to actually produce your reports, Bryce. So yep, it's I think it's probably high time you get rid of your spreadsheet, because that's what we did recently.
Thanks, Julian. Another question from John. Can you explain in a little bit more detail how the EDI for sales orders might work for dealing with commercial chains?
Sure, I'll take that one. So we deal with a number of different EDI, what's referred to as a van, which is effectively an in-between that talks with companies like Coles, Bunnings, Woolworths, etc., as well as some of the obviously the smaller, lesser known chains as well. So the way that that works is the orders, if we're talking from a sales perspective, get created by your customer in their own systems, and then those get sent through to this through to an EDI provider, and then get converted into a sales order directly within MYOB Advanced. So no having to rekey those massive big orders from potentially some of those large customers that you may have. You can have them directly come into the system as a sales order, ready to go.
Okay. Next one, Josh, I'll throw this one at you. You talked about inventory replenishment in relation to purchases. We actually manufacture our products. How does it relate to a manufacturer as opposed to a purchaser? Great question. That's from Peter.
Thanks, Peter. So that one, what I tend to see is, well, once again, probably gives us a good chance to highlight last month's MYOB Advanced manufacturing webinar that we went through. which focused primarily on the production of goods, but also the material requirements planning. One of the key things with replenishing stock in a manufacturing business is that from a lead time perspective, if you've got multiple stages within your bill of materials, that you need to make sure you've got the stock at the right time. And so the material requirements planning does cascade or take into consideration multi-level bill of materials, as well as multiple lead times from suppliers. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at the manufacturing webinar on our YouTube channel from last month. And if you've got any specific questions or once again, require a more detailed or tailored demonstration, always feel free to reach out to Star.
Right, okay, we've only got 2 more questions, so please feel free to add some more in. Where is it? We order in pallets, but we sell by the box or and cartons. That comes from Alan. How about Julian? Do you want to address that one?
Yep. So I'm guessing the question is, can MYOB Advanced handle that type of scenario? And yeah, I think you might have seen from one of the earlier screens Josh went through. I don't know whether you might be able to flick it back up on screen, Josh, but certainly can. So it's obviously a really common thing where people order stock or inventory in bulk, whether that be by the pallet or what have you. And of course, with that, you might look to sell, a la, maybe an office work scenario where you're ordering a pallet of reflex copier paper, and you're obviously selling that in reams. So it definitely does cater to that sort of thing. And as Josh showed earlier, you may have 2 or 3 different suppliers with a preferred supplier, but obviously different prices per supplier. So it's actually set up really well to handle that type of a scenario because the way that inventory is set up.
Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Next, no, I think Josh actually touched on this before, but in a slightly different fashion. Next question from Steve is, we track serial numbers for electronic goods. So that was quite good that you were doing a TV for warranty tracking and service jobs. Can it be configured to run service jobs for repairs? I don't think you touched on that, did you?
I did not touch on that one. Happy to let Julian
okay, Julian?
He's got to earn his keep.
Thanks, guys. So I'm not. I'll put my hand up and I'll say I'm not the product expert here. That's definitely Josh, but I can actually speak to quite a relevant scenario, which again, at MYOB we utilize this platform in MYOB Advanced to actually track serial numbers for the products that we distribute. Being software, and with that occasionally might come a support ticket. And there may be some work required on a platform, and I suppose the obvious space to use that around software is when there's an upgrade or something that happens, and we want to do some testing around it. So the platform is really quite well set up to be able to allocate a serial number to an electronic product or any other product, really, as Josh said. Even if that were to be perishable goods, but yeah, definitely for electronic goods, really well set up. The service repair side of thing, there is a service management feature in MYOB Advanced. Is really quite robust. Again, we utilize this within our own business. So yep, it's actually something quite easily able to be tracked and track the full history, where you've got all of the service requests or repair jobs that you might be quoting on the goods. So not sure what type of a business that is, but yeah, assuming that might be televisions or something like that, like Josh has shown earlier.
Yep. Okay. There's no more questions other than one through from Natalie. Natalie's asked, how do I find last month's webinar? Well, Natalie, there's 3 ways that you can find it. The simplest one is you go to the Star Business Solutions YouTube page and have a look under the playlist for webinars and demonstrations. And I think the last month's webinar should be the #1 on the list, or the first one showing. The second way is that you can go to, in fact, I think Josh is just bringing it up now.
Second.
Actually, it's not #1, it'd be the second one on the list. Second, oh, no, I've actually added a few extra videos. It's the #5 on the list. Sorry about that, Natalie. The second way is you can go to our Star Business Solutions website. If you go to the Insights navigation tab and have a look there, you'll find that the webinar is shown there. You can actually filter by webinars as well if you like, so you can look there. And the third way is you can send me an email and I'll send you a link. So all of those will work. Now, I don't see any other questions at the moment. We'll just give it one more opportunity for people to throw up a question for us. If no more questions, we'll call it a day.
Just while we're waiting there, Norman, I might just jump in actually while people are typing in the chat box. And I'd just say from an MYOB perspective, it's really, quite a great experience to be part of your webinar. And I know for those on the call and listening who may have dealt with Star in the past or maybe new to start business, just a bit of context because they're probably not going to plug themselves. Star are one of MYOB's premier resellers, and they're actually a diamond partner, which actually puts them in the top echelon of partners that work with MYOB. I think it's pretty clear to those who are on the call who can see the demonstration of the work that Josh has been doing. Just their knowledge and application of solutions to business problems is really quite impressive. So, it's a pleasure to be working with the team, and we do hope that you guys have gotten a lot out of the demonstration that Josh has provided for you today.
Thanks for that, Julian, and your yellow envelope with cash will be coming. Okay, there's no more questions, so I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us today for the webinar. We are trying to do one webinar a month on different topics, so if you do get an invite for future webinars, please feel free to accept them and join us again. And let me know if you don't receive the link to the webinar by about this time tomorrow, and I'll certainly arrange for it. And once again, thanks to Josh, thanks to Julian, and everyone, have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.